Hello, my name is Rob Garner. I'm a computer programming instructor, and today I'm going to demonstrate building a Blazor WASM application from the ground up. So first part is building the application. So I'm going to open up Visual Studio 2022 and create a new project. And I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. The intent here is to kind of show the whole process from beginning to end in a relatively short block. So I'm going to trust that if you want to see steps in detail, you'll pause. But we're going to go through this at a normal development pace. So there's several different ways we could start this project. We could start with a blank project. We could, but I think it's useful. I'm going to do this with a Blazor WebAssembly app, and this is for a particular. This is actually building a project for an actual particular application. I'm building a application for a group called the Society for Creative Anachronism. It's a medieval reenactment group. Actually, there's going to be a variety of applications that I need to build for them. So I'm going to just generically call this SEA applications. And these are group websites that are used essentially for event planning and managing other aspects of this nonprofit education organization. So I'm just going to call it SEA applications. And often when you're picking a name, you want to try to be careful to pick something that's generic enough to meet the needs and but specific enough to do what you need it to do. So once I pick the name, I click Next. I'm going to pick a .NET 6. It's the latest iteration. And I'm going to pick core hosted. I'm not going to pick progressive web apps. I'm actually going to make this would allow me to make the application run. Well, actually, maybe I will just do that. I'm still going to. I'm intending on making a MAUI application that goes with this, so that I can create some phone apps with it. But for now, I'll enable this so I can do that. And I don't really want to use top-level statements. And so I'm going to create, or actually, let me see, do I want to include that or not include that? I think I'm going to leave this off, actually. Let's look this up. So top-level statements. Okay, so top-level statements enable you to avoid the extra ceremony required by placing your program's entry point. So this is how we normally write applications in C#. With the .NET 6, they introduced this idea of top-level statements so that you could just actually not even, it basically assumes that all this stuff and this stuff is there, and you just, since this is always the same, if you have top-level statements, you can just write your basic console application like this. It's nice, but I kind of like having this so that all my classes look the same, and I'm used to coding this way. So I'm going to leave these in place. So and I believe to do that, we say do not use top-level statements, which is kind of weird because I think this means that I won't get them. If I read this correctly, this will work correct. This will work well. If it ends up being the way I think I don't want it to be, it'll be fine. So I'm just going to check all these, create my application, and let it build. Okay, the application's built, and if we look at it, we can see we've got a client project, a server project, and a shared project. This shared project is actually used for our model classes and anything that would be shared among multiple projects. We're actually going to end up moving this stuff around a little bit. For one thing, I want a data project. And shared is kind of non-specific. So this project is actually, I'm likely to, well, I might just rename it. In fact, maybe that's what I'll do. So let's take a look at what this looks like at the directory level. So we can see we've got these three projects, client, server, and shared. And I think I want this shared to actually become my data folder. Sometimes people will add a data project directly, but let's take a look at this shared data project. If we double click on it, I can see I've got a pretty bare bones project. It's targeting .NET 6. It's enabled for nullable duplicate using. So okay, this is probably light enough for me to do. So I'm actually going to try to rename this first. I'm going to rename this to data. Now renaming projects is actually kind of tricky sometimes. So I've renamed this. Let's see what it looks like in the yeah, you notice it's still called shared. The project's been renamed, but the actual folder it's in hasn't. I'm going to delete these two bin and obj folders. And what I'm then going to do is, because I want this directory to be to have the same names. So one of the dangerous things to do is actually changing these folder names. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to rename this to, now you're thinking, well, if it's dangerous, why are you doing it? Well, because I just want this to be named the right way. So I'm going to change this to data. And this will probably break everything. Let's see, did it break it? Not yet, maybe. But one thing, if you do that, probably a good idea is close out your project. And then look at your solution file. There's server, there's client, and there's data. That's correct. That's correct. Okay, I think we're okay. Maybe. Oh no, right there. So one of the things that happened is when I renamed the project folder manually to data, I need to make sure that in the solution file, it's now pointing to the right directory. So if you want to rename your project files, like in this case, I want to do it because I want it to be named a particular way, then you have to edit the solution folder file to match that. And having done that, let's see if I did everything correctly. So I'll reopen the solutions folder and see if it actually opens up. Okay, so on renaming, we end up getting some interesting things happening. So notice that there are other areas in this application that's looking for something called shared. And it's having a problem from the so let's see if it's in here that we're having a problem. Okay, no references there. Let's double click on the solution. And let's see. Yeah, there's a reference where we need to change that to data. So I'll save that. So that was in the client project. And then let's see, the data project is fine. Let's see if the server project, yeah, there. So there's these include statements which are pointing this data project to, this is called shared because it's shared between these two projects. I want this to be called data. And just to see if I got it, I'm going to hit Control F5, do a build, and see if everything can be found. And we have a working application, it looks like. Let's see, yep. The counter was working, the fetch data. Let's see if it finds it. Yep, it's finding. So we didn't break the application, but we managed to rename this shared folder to data, which I'm going to be using this for my data. This is a model class, so it makes sense to rename it. The other way you could do this sort of thing is also, if you wanted to, just leave that shared folder in, right click, and add a project. And add a class library and just call it data. And then you would have that second project. You would then have to link those two, the client and the server, to that data project. And you'd have the same setup, but you would then have this extra shared directory. So I kind of prefer to do this, just to have this separated. Now, the other thing that I need to do in here is I need to add two package references. And what I need is, since I'm going to be using Entity Framework and SQLite, I need to add some NuGet packages. And you can do that by right-clicking. There's about 5 different ways of doing this. You can use the command line interface, or you can install those packages using the convenient NuGet package manager. And what we're looking for is Microsoft Entity Framework Core SQLite. And we're going to browse, look at the browsed ones. And so we want let's see, do I want core? No, I just want this one. I want just a regular SQLite. And so I'll click install. Last one I was using was 6.09. It looks like they now have 7.0. Oh, that's the release candidate. I don't want that actually. So we're going to switch it over to the long-term support version. So I'll let it finish up and then I'll undo that. So that can happen. Look at the version. You probably don't want the release candidate unless you're just playing around with stuff. Let me just, I think that will cancel it. Okay. So let's look at the versions. Latest stable is 6.10. So I want the latest stable. So I'm going to install that and let that one run. Okay, that one's in. And so the next thing we want is we want SQLite and we want tools. Now, you'll pick whatever you're using for your database. I'm using SQLite mostly because for this small type of application, it's free. And I kind of when you have a service provider, and free is about the best price for a database, so I'm using SQLite. And so here we have Microsoft Entity Framework Core Tools. We need that one in order to work with Entity Framework. And again, I'm going to go for the latest stable and install that. So now, just to verify that they came in, you can see here in that project under dependencies, you can see if those got installed. And this is the list of the packages that you've installed on this application. You can also just click on installed in here and you'll see, make sure you clear that out. You can see what's been installed so far. Both of these are 6.1 version. The other place you can see this is actually here as well. So once you do that in your project directory, you're going to get the package references. And by the way, if you have this, you can just copy and paste that into the project folder, and it'll do the install as well. So we have the packages we need for our data installed. I'm going to do a build just to make sure that there's no issues. And it built fine, so I think we're okay so far. So this is probably a good opportunity to add my project to source control. And in my case, I'm going to be, and I think I'm going to want to use an organization. So one of the things about this is, let's see, I'm going to go into GitHub and make it an organization first. And to create an organization, you go to GitHub, you go to your organizations, and let's see. I already have one. I guess I can use this one. I think Actually, I want to make, do I want this to be more generic? Actually, I think this will work. I'll put it in here. So since I have this organization, let's see if I can change the owner to that organization. There we go. So this is now going to be owned by this, and maybe I'll put a description. Applications for SCA groups. I'm going to leave this private, and I may make it public later. And I'm going to create and push this application. Okay, I can see now I've got these icons indicating that these things are in up on GitHub. I can go to my organization and look at the repositories and see there's SCA applications. There's others that I have in here that I was working on other things. These are probably all going to go away. But there's my application up on GitHub. Okay. Now that I have that on GitHub, the next thing I want to do is start configuring this. I'm going to configure my data. I'm going application next. So I'll continue on in the next segment on how to configure this data application beyond installing these libraries.